Hello. Today the series which tells you all the crucial things you need to know about big issues in education is looking at how GCSEs are changing. From September 2009, sweeping changes to GCSEs come into effect following a year-long subject-by-subject review by the assessment agency, the QCA. So there's lots to catch up on.
Well, the first reaction was, we've just got this lot sorted out, why are you now changing the goalposts?
We generally do these about once every 5 years, and certainly the GCSEs, which were introduced in 2001, are due for a refreshing.
It's really important to change GCSEs from time to time and other qualifications so that we make sure that the curriculum is keeping pace with the changes in life in general, so that young people are being educated for life as they're going to meet it.
Most subjects are changing from September 2009, although English, Maths and ICT have been developed on a different timescale, mainly to incorporate the new functional skills from 2010. Science has already been reviewed and the new syllabus is being taught. But do science teachers feel that change was necessary?
As far as I'm concerned, they were brought in because the basic proposition is that young people are bored of science lessons. Those that deliver science education have given up on their capacity to get it across to young people that it has any impact or any worth for them, and they want to replace it with something else. And I disagree rather violently with that proposition, so I think that's the way I'd understand that.
It makes it real, it makes it relevant. The kids love to talk about it. They don't particularly want to write about it, but they love to talk about it. This is an opportunity for them to explore it in their own way.
So part of the aim of the changes is to make GCSEs more relevant to the 21st century.
More or less, you could say that the old syllabus tried to, and you can quibble about it, but tried to present the subject as a coherent whole in terms of, say, the basic fundamental principles behind force, acceleration, Newton's laws, however you look at a subject, in that order. So the principles that underlie our understanding of, say, the physical sciences. Whereas the new specification, new syllabus, is much more interested in the way in which a consumer of science would appreciate the impact of science on their lives. And therefore the proposition is that you are giving young people the opportunity to make informed choices about things that impact upon them.
Instead of just accepting everything the way it's given to them, they will say, well, where's the scientific evidence? What was your baseline? How many people was involved in the sample? Where's the proof? And this is all because of the way we're now teaching the science curriculum. And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
And so one of the key features of the new GCSE science is that young people following that come out with a capacity to evaluate and understand the scientific information with which we're all bombarded these days and make their own judgments. And I think that's very important.
Well, to probe a bit further into these changes to GCSEs, I'm joined in the studio by Tina Isaacs, Head of 14 to 19 Regulation at the assessment watchdog Ofqual. Tina, welcome. Why did GCSEs need changing?
Well, for something like science, it's pretty obvious. Science moves along and you have to update, but even history moves on, and so over time you do absolutely want to update. The relevance is more in the approach, in that we're trying to have the GCSEs cover the skills as well as the knowledge and understanding that students need to have a successful experience.
And to what extent are these changes about making sure that GCSEs will fit in with the new diplomas?
It's the new secondary curriculum that's been introduced for September 2008, the new diplomas, the functional skills for those that are going to be introduced in 2010. What we want to make sure is that there's a curriculum in the round and that GCSEs as qualifications fit into that larger curriculum.
And with teachers already having to cope with so many other changes, why did one member of the 14 to 19 QCA committee think change was needed at all?
They needed changing because we needed to ensure that young people were developing a different set of skills. So there was a need to change them, and then there were various other issues that were coming along, such as people's concerns about coursework, that some people were getting too much help from their parents or not enough help from their parents, or too much help from the internet. And so I think there are a lot of different things that came together that meant that they really needed to be looked at again.
So why else have the GCSEs been changed? Well, the previous lot were seen as too narrow across the ability range. So now pupils will face exams with a broad range of question styles so that all candidates can show what they know, understand and can do. Along with this broader range of questions will be a new range of applied and general pathways within the new GCSE courses, so that those with a more practical bent can emerge with the same qualification as someone planning to take the subject to A-level and possibly to university.
We need as much relevance as possible, whilst at the same time ensuring that the kind of high-level thinking, high-level knowledge is still accessible and available to young people.
Now, a lot of these changes is about making the learning, in a sense, more applied learning. But isn't that what the diplomas are supposed to do, about applied learning? So why not keep GCSEs as purely academic?
You don't want to dovetail students and say, these are your diploma students, these are your GCSE students, so the latter being academic and the former being vocational. What you want is to have qualifications that cover the waters.
Now, perhaps the biggest and for students the most noticeable change is the introduction of controlled assessment. This replaces coursework, which unfortunately came to be seen as unreliable because of uncertainty about how much of students' work was actually their own.
Controlled assessment is work done under controlled conditions, and the reason for introducing it is to address the concerns that have been expressed about coursework over the possibilities of plagiarism and so on and so forth. In fact, controlled assessment is able to be controlled rather better because we specify the tasks more closely than we did under the old coursework arrangements, so the marking criteria can be correspondingly tighter.
In English, we're worried about the removal of coursework because we believe that particularly with our EAL learners and some of our children with low levels of literacy, the confidence they've gained through working on coursework and ending up with something they're very proud of, and we feel that in humanities too, has been a major part of accelerating their progress.
Now, the reason for this change from coursework to controlled assessment is presumably because there were problems with coursework. What were they?
Yes, I mean, first, the problems were not huge, but there were problems. And mainly it was about students inappropriately using sources from the internet and saying that it was their own, so plagiarism. There were some instances where parents were giving too much help. Basically, coursework was, in some subjects, was uncontrolled, and we're trying to institute an element of further control.
Have the precise arrangements for controlled assessment been decided in all subjects yet?
Absolutely, and they're on our website. We have rules, subject by subject, rules for controlled assessment, and also general rules for controlled assessment. So I think as the first year rolls out next year, QCA will be working with teachers, with publishing guidance, having meetings and conferences and that sort of thing. And of course the awarding bodies also are working directly with their teachers.
So what have the exam boards found are the things that are worrying teachers about controlled assessment?
Clearly the biggest issue for them, apart from the practicalities of actually doing it, is whether it will take away from teaching time. And I think that is a real issue that needs to be addressed. I think the way you address it is to make sure, as I believe we have, that the tasks are themselves valuable, educationally worthwhile, so that when students are doing their controlled assessment, they are still learning as well.
Does everyone understand what they're doing? Yeah, let's do it then, please.
Is there still a danger, though, that some teachers would not be clear where the dividing line is between too much help and proper control conditions? Is it absolutely clear how much help they can and can't give?
Yes, the rules really do cover those sorts of things. I do think that in the first year that teachers are going to have to get used to these new roles, but because we've specified what the controls are for each of the elements, how long they're supposed to take, or how many words a student's supposed to produce, teachers should be pretty clear in what their roles are.
Can there be interaction between the pupils and the teacher?
Absolutely. Some elements will be done under absolutely strict supervision, but we're talking about other things. So the teacher will be there, the students could have access to resources within the classroom, they could use the internet, but the teacher will be within the room and working with the students.
Of course, in the end, the way an individual teacher will operate controlled assessment will depend partly upon the conditions in their school, but there are some fairly clear rules that have to be followed to make it fit the criteria and be genuinely controlled.
The other change to GCSEs is that more will be unitised. That is, students will be able to take some of their assessments during the course rather than at the end.
Basically, unitisation within GCSEs means that students can do some elements of their assessment before the end of the 2 years. They have to do at least 40% at the end. They can only resit any element once, so there are controls in place. But it means that at the end of the first year, for example, you can be assessed on that first year's work.
One of the advantages of the modular approach is that pupils are tested fairly early on, and they get a real idea of what their grade is likely to be.
In maths, where we're doing a modular maths syllabus already, they like the quick work and then the exam. They feel that's motivated students, help them make sure they're assessing and teaching at the right levels. And of course in a modular maths you do have the chance at least once to retake a module.
I would like to reassure teachers that this hasn't removed entirely the traditional approach to assessment, because if teachers wanted to, they could obviously approach it as a linear qualification and take those units all in the final session.
In some subjects, such as English and history, there will be an increasing emphasis on evaluating sources, or in the case of media studies, audiences.
Miss Smith. You think Miss Smith is a mainstreamer? Yeah. Okay. You sure she's not an aspirer? Both. She could be a bit of both. Now this is the point I was hoping you would raise, guys. Many people are not just one category, are they? It's an oversimplification of what people actually are and how they behave, how they dress, how they act, how they represent themselves in society. Okay?
So, do you think there's a bit of a discrepancy between being an aspirer and a succeeder?
So, media studies course going on there. Obviously, assessing sources is an important skill. Would you say the new GCSEs are putting more emphasis on that sort of skill?
Yes, it's the analytical skills of being able to address an audience for a purpose, to be able to select among sources, to choose the best. These are the skills that we all use in everyday life, and it's really good to introduce 14 to 16-year-olds to those skills.
So finally, how much help is there out there to help them to understand these new GCSEs?
Right, QCA is publishing quite a lot of guidance, and I would suggest that people go on to the 14 to 19 website for QCA, and the awarding bodies are all charged with ensuring that they have really good inset programs for their new specifications.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all for now. I can only say, as a parent, I'm glad my children are now through their GCSEs. Goodbye.